Okay, so now it is May 4th, 2022 at 5:17 in the morning. Oh, I've been up since, like, I don't know, 4. I was working in the yard yesterday, a little bit in the basement, and then I went out in the yard. I started working on cleaning out the rabbit hutch. I'm halfway done. I gotta do the other half probably today. Depends if it's raining or not, because it was kind of drizzling yesterday. Whack some back. But I have to admit, it kind of felt good to be in the yard versus in the kitchen like last year. This year is to finish the yard. Okay, that's what I said I was going to do, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do. Right? So I'm going to give it my all. Only I have to be careful how I'm walking around out there. So, hold on a minute. Cheers. That was a joke. Anyway. Okay, the title of this video is Better a Pitbull Than a Poodle. I was speaking to a Pitbull over there. Yeah. And the reason for that was because a big-ass bin was dropped off at that fourplex. It's a duplex cut into 4, right? Because these, homeowners, they try and maximize. Now, mind you, that thing has been like that forever. But, they try and maximize every penny they can get out of these houses, especially these days. That's why I myself, I'm having such a hard time because of what's going on in the economy. And anyway, this pit bull, he was a nice pit bull. I told him that. I says, you're a nice pit bull. He goes, oh. The other one that was standing beside him, he was a little sketchy. But he was a nice pit bull too, right? And so I was, asking him what was going on, right, with that bin. And I says, because I heard from these people over here that lady that lived over there up on top was hauled out of there with the police. So I said, what's going on? And right? I live over here, right? And he goes, oh, well, apparently, this is what he said. I don't know if it's true. Oh, my eye is itchy. The previous tenant that lived there on the upper floor moved out and left the key, I guess, with one of her friends and let them stay in the suite. So technically that woman wasn't supposed to be there, right? Because she wasn't even the one that originally rented it. And she was smoking crack and all this crap. That's what he was saying. And she wasn't paying rent. So that's why they had to remove her. Now I'm a little confused because I'm not sure if that is the same woman that's been living there all these years, or if it's a woman that looks kind of like the woman that lives there, that used to live there, right? Because that was the woman that I took that box to that came to my house, and she didn't indicate anything. Like, I don't know, like, I'd have to talk to her if I ever see her. I think maybe she was banging on the door after the fact when those guys left, but I didn't go over and, hey, right? And I just was busy in the yard, and there's only so much I can absorb at one time. And I was really trying to be fair about the information that I was receiving from that fella, right? In terms of, we talked about what's going on in the economy, with the housing market. I said, please help me to understand. I said, can you maybe explain something to me, right? In terms of like what's going on, because you do realize that people like me are getting angry. Not because we don't like you as a homeowner or a property developer, but it's people like you who are creating a lot of problems for people like me. I just straight up talk to him, right? And he was Punjabi. He had his turban, but he was a young man who had really good English skills. And I told him, I said, you speak very good. You're very clear about what you're saying, and I appreciate that, right? Because he went out of his way to explain to me that basically what's going on in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and I guess Toronto, those are the two main hubs where what's happening is through our governments, right? Governments, federal, provincial, and municipal, right? They're bringing in 1.3 million immigrants, and the cities are on board through the provinces, through the legislative assemblies, to build housing to accommodate them. Not to build housing to accommodate the Canadian-born people, regardless of their ethnic heritage, okay? It's not all about white people, okay? It's not all about natives, okay? Or anyone else other than you were born in this country. They're not building the housing for us who were born in this country, but they're building it for the immigrants people. Because he says, well, we need the housing because there's just, the demand is too high. And we need to, bring in condensed housing. And I said, oh my, you sound like my son. He goes, oh, your son's a smart man, right? And he says, your son must be a smart man. I said, well, yeah, my son is smart, but I tend to disagree because I don't think condensed stack and pack housing is necessarily good for society, right? And he goes, yeah, but when you're, facing 1.3 million people coming into this country this year through immigration, and they're migrating to the Vancouver, like where I live, on the west coast of Canada, or they're, settling in basically Toronto as majorities, right? He says that's what has to happen because there's just not enough supply. And then it becomes bidding wars between houses when they come up for sale, right? And so, like, for example, I wish I would have recorded it because then it would be, I didn't bring my camera, I didn't have my camera, but, it would be, you'd hear it from him how he explained it, okay, because, he was talking, right? So I can only remember so much, right? But that's basically what he said. It's because of the immigrants coming into the country, and the provincial governments are making arrangements with the cities to build housing, condensed housing, to accommodate them, basically, which creates bidding wars between people who buy houses, whether to live in or whether to fill that gap, right? So of course you've got the corporations bidding, like the big corporations, the ones that can come in and buy a whole block. These fellows over there, they're just a small company, and it would be impractical, I think, for them to buy the whole block at 2 million, 2 million, 2 million. Because I said, well, my landlady's looking at selling her house. I says, are you aware of that? He goes, no. I said, well, I don't know. That guy over there was talking about that everybody on the block wants to sell at one time, but my landlady wants $2 million. I said, are you on board with that? Like, if there's your opportunity, if you're a property developer, even if you're a small fry, right? My landlady's thinking about selling her house, cough up $2 million and you'll have 2 houses on the block and you'll be in a good position, basically, right? But thing is, they're a small company and they're struggling because what's happening, because I brought up the issue of, like I said, well, aren't you concerned about the economy in terms of like, the supply chain of things not coming in through the ports and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, yeah, it's starting to be an issue. We can't get plumbing parts. Because a lot of these guys also build houses, right? Because, they run in 10, a pack of 10. So 10 guys get together, they slap down whatever and they get their down payment and then they get their house. And because they're building houses, they're already in the market and they know what's going on. And then they start merging themselves into becoming, I guess, property developers, right? And then you've got the ones that are up here, been doing it for a long time, and then you get the young ones coming in through the ranks, right? So I don't think he's up there. I think they're down here somewhere. So besides that point, he goes, he says, we're having a real issue securing plumbing parts, electrical parts, and it is becoming an issue. It's been an issue for a bit, and it hasn't gone away. And I said, well, isn't that a concern? Like, what do you think's going to happen over the next couple of years if it keeps up like that? And he didn't have an answer for that one, right? And then I asked him, well, aren't you concerned, because he said if he was to buy, before he would buy this house, right, he'd have to go to the city to find out how many suites he could build on it. No, it's not even about building a house anymore, per se, as it is about how many suites, independent suites, right? Can you build 2 units on this lot? Can you build 4 units on this lot? Or can you build 6 units on this lot? I said, well, you're not going to get 6 units on this lot, right? It's not a very, it's just a house with a little bit of land. There's no way you're going to get six separate units, right? And I told him, and I said, I think you should know this, but this whole block apparently has been designated as commercial in terms of, like an apartment or townhouse, condo, more like a condo, because then they stack and pack. Okay? But they're only doing it for the immigrants, people. That's it. They're not doing it for people like me. And then I explained my situation in terms of, I have a disabled grandchild, very severely disabled, 2 orphans, right? And, I've been in my house for 12 years and, I'm petrified. I have no place to go, but what's going on? Like, why is this happening? Because it makes me angry. And, I see you guys as like, kind of like the problem, because, you're creating 10,000, well, more than 10,000. You're creating thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of homeless people that were born in this country as you're accommodating immigrants. And he goes, yes, that's true. He acknowledged it, so that made me feel good that he acknowledged it, people. He said, but that goes back to basically the politicians and the cities and those types of things. And that's where a large part of the corruption is, because the politicians are benefiting from it. So he knows, right? He knows. And maybe in the beginning, in terms of what these people do, in terms of business, it never really dawned on them that there was going to be an aftermath in terms of hard times coming. But now with the collapse of the economy for communism, because right now they're operating, in my opinion, on capitalism. Okay, and they've been running wild with it and getting rich. And some of them are probably, have scruples, have morals, and are ethical businessmen and women, where many others are ruthless, vicious, and down and out fucking mean, and don't care where you go. Okay, right? Because, it's just human nature, okay? So, but now with the fact that they can't get the plumbing parts as fast as they used to, the electrical parts as fast as they used to, he said lumber is a big one, and it's been like that for a long time, but not for these bigger corporations, not for these ones that are buying up, like Sandy's house, the one that's being flooded out all the time, and whatnot, right? When her house sold, it was a corporation, a larger corporation. I don't know what kind of corporation. I think they're Punjabi, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that. Either or, they bought all 4 houses in a row at 1.5 million. And that was almost a year ago and a bit. Just all 4 houses in a row at $1.5 million each. This is why my landlady is not stupid. She knows it's just a matter of time before somebody's going to approach her with a $2 million bid, because they're going to want the whole block. And if they can, they're going to snag that little house over there at the same time because they can afford it. Those are the ones that are getting the lumber before the smaller guys, like those guys over there, right? Because I guess they have more connections. They can pay the money. They can pay the shipping. They can pay the import fees. They can pay. And they're building, and they don't care where they're pushing out the people after they tear down the houses. And I told this guy, and he says, yeah. And I says, but you're creating like mass homelessness, and like, you right? And he goes, well, that's politicians. It's the politicians. It's not to say that they're not responsible too, but he says, the corruption is stemming in from because the politicians are benefiting from it. So now I don't know if that's the original woman that lived there all these years and just decided not to pay rent, because you have to remember, in that fourplex, duplex, right? When they bought it, they came in and tried to kick everybody out or pay twice as much. And then the native woman that lived in the basement, I don't know if she lives there anymore, she ended up phoning the dad. Remember I told you this story? And said, oh, and then dad came in and put his son into check and said, smarten up, don't be an asshole. This is not the way the world works. So whether she moved out or not, I don't know. As for the one on top, well, the one that used to live there was blonde. The one that's there now is kind of blonde. Now, whether they're the same woman or not, I don't know, right? And was it because she stopped paying rent because they wanted double the money, and she's just said, I can't afford it, and just stop paying rent, or did the original woman move out and just left the key behind, and and they were turning it into a shack, because it happens, right people? So I asked him, I said, okay, so as a landlord, what's important in this day and age when it comes to tenants? He says, rent. It's important that, because this is where you have to stay a steady track, right? If you're losing over here, you're being put on hold over here in terms of you can't get the plumbing and the electrical parts. Something else over here is stalling you. The last thing you want to do is lose your rent. But as the economy continues to crash because of inflation and all this other crap, people like me who are poor, you know, some of us aren't any better than some of those people over there. Like, they just don't want to pay rent. They start trashing their houses, and they make the landlords, you know, take them to the landlords in Tensiac branch, and then, you know, eventually they'll just trash the house, and so the landlord gets stuck with a huge fee, right, in terms of that financial loss. So he basically said, though, that rent in this day and age is important, in terms of it's one of the priorities to keep things from crashing. And I said, well, at least I can meet that expectation. But the problem with that, though, is that because of the way things have been going on, people expect me to give away everything and pay the same amount of rent for 2/3 less than what I got right now, just so that they can continue to sustain themselves in their own monster houses, because it's not just one person, it's the whole, right? Within their own community. Because if I was to take you to where my landlady lives, it's monster home after monster home after monster home after monster home, and it's basically Little India, okay? Basically. In other words, it's all Punjabis, that's it. Right? Because, you know, they're comfortable with each other, and that's just the way it is. And it's like that with any ethnic group. You could go into Richmond and it's all Chinese, basically, right? So, you know, and so anyway, he somewhat made me feel better. I told him, you know, I said, oh, you're a good pit bull. He's laughing, right? And, you know, and because I said, you know, I got a pit bull problem, right? I'm just trying to understand, right? You know, his friend was a little sketchy. He was a sketchy pit bull, but better a pit bull than a poodle. Okay, I'd take a pit bull any day per se over a poodle, right? Protecting the yard. Okay, I think a pit bull could do a better job at it. so you know, I told him after it was all said and done that I'd go get them some pussycats, and they just broke out laughing. They thought that was just too funny, just to calm them down, keep them happy. And I don't, just pussycats, like in terms of like a female, you know, that they could love. That kind of pussycat, right? Not one that they could chew up, right, and maul and mangle. They knew what I was saying, right? But yeah, they're concerned that whatever's going on in the economy is not good, right? And then I asked him, like I did, I said, well, you know, with all this stack and packing with the people, and now we know why, it's because of the immigrants. It's been confirmed, people. It's because of the immigrants, right? And the politicians are capitalizing off of it, definitely, he said. And of course, you know, you're going to have other people in there capitalizing off of it, because that's just the way life goes, right? And then I asked him, well, aren't you concerned about, you know, food, right? With the food shortages coming, and just with the supply chain and just the disruptions. And he goes, no, not at all. I don't think about it. I said, well, you know, it's kind of sound like my son. So I guess you figure that the government will always take care of the herd. He goes, no, it's not that. I don't, you know, I just don't think about it. And then I said, well, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a man thing. So I asked him, I said, well, do you cook? Do you cook? Because if you cook, you should be concerned about food. He goes, yeah, I cook. I said, well, there you go. Right? What is the point of stacking, packing all these people if you can't feed them? Right? And, you know, if they're building these houses for these immigrants, like I said, these landlords, they're renting to the immigrants first because of the federal subsidies that are coming in with them, right? Through their refugee status, their whatever status they're coming in under. Okay, oftentimes they're being supported through the federal and provincial government, I guess through the freaking Agenda 2030, the UN Accord, the freaking Sendell framework, who knows? But, you know, that's what it is, people. He said, you know, not too many people want to live out in the interior, you know, further out, right? Where there's more, I guess you could say, somewhat affordable housing. And that's true. But for someone like me with Amari, people, like I said, I'm trapped. It's not like I can go off into the boonies with Amari and live on a homestead. It's not practical because, you know, I have doctor's appointments and this appointment and that appointment. And then if an emergency happens, like when he almost died with that freaking constipation crap, right? You know, like that stuff is serious. So it's not like I can go too far. But I'm basically being pushed out because of immigrants. And ruthless property developers. Ruthless property developers. And even landlords. Because they go on Craigslist. Well, they dictate the rent. So every time they kick out somebody, they raise the rent by 50%, 100%, 200%, right? 1,000%. And the new tenant comes in and wouldn't know the difference. And then they live for a while, and then as that continues to go on, and now the rent is more, but of course the tenant's not going to pay that because, you know, that's by law. They can't just kick you out so they can rent it out to somebody new and raise the rent by 100%. Can't, you know, kick you out when you're paying 1,000 and then move in another person and charge 3,000. But that's what they're doing, people. They've been doing this kind of crap for a long, long time. And that's what puts me in a very precarious position. That's why I'm always under attack from that perspective. Because the minute I leave, they can get $4,500 for this fucking house and not invest a dime. You see, that's the thing. They don't even have to invest a dime. They just have to kick me out. That's it. And they make 3 times the money. 2.5 times the money than what they're making now. And they don't care where I go. Because they don't need me. I'm insignificant. Because they're going to have 10,000 immigrants banging on the door with their federal subsidies saying, well, we want to live there. We're better than the last tenant. We're better. There you go. We're better than the last tenant. Just got my coffee everywhere. Oh, what a mess. Hold on a minute. I gotta go make another one. Okay, and you have to remember, like, when this Syrian family was imported into this house, implanted, placed, the city helped them to do that, people, because through these programs with all these immigrants coming in, you know, there's funding, I would think, from a federal level that goes directly into the city budget to house these people as they're coming in from Afghanistan, Syria, wherever, okay? And now Ukraine. To where you've got the premier saying, Well, just clear out some boxes from a spare room that you have in your house and open up your heart and just let these Ukrainians move in. Yeah, okay. As if people want to do that, or as if they're required to do that, okay? Why not clean up fucking Ukraine? How about that? Because there's a lot of corruption going on in Ukraine. And they have biolabs that have been discovered where they've been doing genetic modification with bioweapons to attack certain ethnicities, select populations with their genetics. Not to mention Crimea, and that's where they take human DNA and blend it in with an animal or an insect or a crustacean or something else that is not human. Okay? Seriously. So, you know, Surrey a few years ago absorbed 10,000 Syrian individuals, and they're still placing them. And they're being placed through city workers, through, I guess, non-profit organizations that somehow the city is in partnership with. Because the guy who got this house for these Syrians worked for the city. He tried to say it was his brother, but it wasn't his brother. Honestly, I think Frenchie, the one that rides around in a moped and is the kingpin to sell drugs in the neighborhood while sitting up on social assistance, long-term disability, I think that is the brother to those people who moved in, because they look the same almost, okay? The one that said that worked for the city, sure, he was probably Syrian because he spoke the language, but I don't think he was the brother. I think he was working for the city to place these people. And that's why families like mine are being targeted from the inside. Okay, in terms of what happened to Sierra, what happened to Shimei, what happened to Amari, what happened to Uncle John, just the whole 9 yards, okay? Because they have to remove us to replace us with people like who moved in next door, okay? And that's throughout the whole province because of the numbers of immigrants coming into the country as a whole. And there's big money because it's human trafficking. That's what it is on all levels. Not only are they trafficking them into the country, but they're trafficking them into the cities and into the houses, okay? And they're setting them up, some of them, to be families like mine at some point in the future, after families like mine are basically wiped out, okay? You can't push tens and tens and tens of thousands of people out of their houses with no place to go, basically, because nothing is affordable, because everything else is being subsidized by provincial, municipal, and federal governments, because they're bringing in a new class of people that are basically racist and prejudiced and bigots, because there's an attack on white people, or in general, poor people. Okay, poor people. And if you're sitting on $5,000 federal subsidy, provincial subsidy, and whatever other subsidies, because don't forget, as soon as they come in, they sign up with the food bank, they sign up with this, they sign up with that, because it's already all in the system and already paid for through the federal government saying you have to house them. You have to house them first before you house families such as mine, even if it means kicking out my family, okay, and accusing me of things that I haven't done. In other words, you can't afford $4,500 a month, so therefore you are useless, insignificant, get the fuck out, because we've got a family ready to move in 2 minutes after you're gone, basically, and we'll get what we want. And this is what these landlords know, and they've taken it to the max. Okay? And this is why they're tearing up the province and building these stack and pack. How many units can you get on one lot? If you can get 6 units, then it's worth buying the lot. If you can only build 2, then no, it's not really worth the investment. But if you get the whole fucking block, then you get 400 suites. because now you're into the big buildings, right? Which is the bigger corporation, which is taking up all the resources in terms of the electrical, the plumbing, supplies, the wood, this, that, and everything else. So the little guys over there at the end of the block, you know, they're going to feel it first in terms of hard times coming. And then this fella over here, he was saying, you know, what could end up becoming an even bigger issue is if the government's, I don't know which one, but lowers the interest rates just to stimulate the economy, like, you know, mortgage rates, that type of thing, just to, you know, as a buffer to hide what's really going on, to trick people, to make them think that they're living a normal life, right? Then what happens is you get all these renters on fixed incomes, whatever, like not, you know, just whatever, all of a sudden start buying up houses because the interest rates are lower, which puts even more pressure on the housing market in general, right? So yeah, I don't know, people, like, you know, when they did what they did to Amari, it was like they hammered the nails into the coffin, people. Because if it, you know, knowing what I know and just everything, if I could move and get out, Lucy wants me to go to Kitimat. Well, I can't because of Amari. I'd be having to fly to the children's hospital for an appointment, right? Or they'd just take him. And I'd be stuck in Kitimat, and I wouldn't be able to go see him because I wouldn't have the money to get to wherever they freaking took him because of, you know, the doctor said so, right? You know, they decided they wanted to cut him open and do hip surgery, and I'm sitting up in Kitimat. Okay, it's not going to work. So anywhere I can't. I'm stuck basically in the city, people, even though I don't want to be here, right? And I'm at the complete mercy of Pitbulls. Mean or nice. Doesn't matter. Right? Because I'm sure in hell not dealing with a bunch of fucking poodles, that's for sure. Okay? And they're not Rottweilers. Okay? They're not. And they're not Doberman Pinschers. They're not. They're Pitbulls. And I don't have a problem with Pitbulls. It's just, I don't know how to escape this trap I'm in, people, because I guess in the States they have such a thing as called critical race theory, where basically they're discriminating against white people now. They're encouraging young people to hate white people if they're a minority of some kind, right? And that, you know, they're turning away people from, like, medical procedures before, you know, you're white, before we give it to you, we're going to give it to them because they're something else, whatever ethnic group they are, right? You know, they're already implanting that targeting of an ethnic group, Caucasian, as they're harvesting us and our children and our assets, if we have them. This is why elderly people living in their homes who happen to be white are being targeted through the healthcare system. If they go in for something, they don't ever come out. And I witnessed that when Uncle John was in that temporary care ward with all those old white people asking my kids to help them because the workers weren't doing their job and weren't helping them to go to the bathroom and do the things that needed to be done when it came to that personal care. Right? And they were telling my kids and telling me, right, that they weren't allowed to leave and that they were being forced to sell their houses and go into long-term care. That's how white people, elderly white people, are being treated out here if they own assets. Does that mean every elderly white person? No. But if they're vulnerable and they're easy to attack and lock up, yes. Or they're dying in their beds like Debbie. Right? just saying. So anyway, I don't know. I don't know, people. I just don't know. Like, you know, I didn't create this mess. I didn't create this mess, okay? But I'm being punished for it. Because I can't keep up with the financial end of the corruption. Okay? Because I can't keep up with the financial end of the corruption. That's my crime. And therefore, I'm mistreated for that. For somebody else's crime. Because that's basically what it fucking boils down to. Okay? And it sets my family up for even a greater failure. Because when I move, I'm not going to be able to accommodate my disabled grandson because of the corruption in my community and in my province and in my country. Because it's like that fella said over there. This is being fueled by politicians who are benefiting from it. That's where a large part of the corruption is. The people themselves just trying to navigate and build a life and capitalize, you know, be capitalists, you know, businessmen, businesswomen, you know, they're like anybody, you know, some of them are like really good salespeople, and you know, they're good at what they do, and human nature is human nature, but our governments are failing to protect the Canadian people. That's basically what's happening here. The most vulnerable ones, that is, right? Like I said, if you're a criminal, you'll do well. If you're a criminal, you'll fucking do well. I've been saying it for years. Right? So, we know that there's a short supply on plumbing material, electrical material, lumber is a big one, on top of a few other things, I'm sure. I don't know how long these property developers can sustain themselves if they don't have access to supplies, unless, of course, they're a big corporation that can pay those shipping costs, or they have a stash already tucked away in terms of a huge warehouse with a bunch of electrical supplies that they're just not telling anybody about, and that's why they can continue to build while everybody else is crashing, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, those guys at the end of the block are probably just teetering. They're not crashing, because that's why I went to talk to him, right? Like, I wanted to feel him out. Like, do you feel threatened as a business person in terms of what's going on in the economy in light of where it's going with the depopulation agenda, the smart cities agenda, the removal of you know, coal and oil and gas and all this other stuff to bring in wise energy initiatives, green energy initiatives. I don't know, people. All I know is, like, why are you buying all these houses if you can't do anything with them because there's no supplies? Because it's going to come to that more than likely at some point. Only some people are going to have the supplies. And it probably will be the bigger corporations, the ones that are, like, we're talking the multi-billion-dollar corporation. The one that can go in and spend $2 million per house and buy all 6 houses in one row. Because it's nothing to them. It's absolutely nothing to them. Right? Versus what's been going on. I don't know. Either or, I'm caught up in that fucking web. It doesn't matter if it's a corporation or if it's the little guy, right? I'm still caught up in that web. And I'm the one that's being accused of being abusive and taking advantage of people because I can't keep up with the corruption in terms of the dollar amount that I'm expected to pay just to be able to live in a house that I have been living in for 12 fucking years and basically gave up my life for. And I told that to my landlady. I said, you do realize I gave up my life for you. My life is ruined, basically, because of this house and you, for the amount of effort that I put into the yard just to be able to I don't know, I'll try to bring up her property value, but the thing is, the government came in with that freaking boomerang. And last year, all I did was almost every day, every fucking day, people. I was in the kitchen. I have the videos to prove it. Just like I have the videos to prove how I was in the yard almost every day for years and years and years and years and years and years. Well, I took 1 year off only because there's going to be a major food shortage for those who are below a certain income level. And it is going to trickle down to those pit bulls over there that are just teetering. That's why I asked him, well, do you cook? Because if you cook, then yeah, you're going to get concerned about no food in the fucking grocery stores sooner than later. Because you like to eat, right? You like to cook, right? You know, he's not noticing it right now. He's ignoring it. He doesn't expect the government to freaking feed the herd. Maybe he knows something that I don't know. You know, he's Punjabi. He's got connections out to the farms. So, you know, maybe that's why he's not concerned. But at the end of the day, you're stacking and packing these houses, but no means to feed the people, especially if everything's shutting down around us on a global sense. You know, Shanghai, they locked up how many 26 million people? People are jumping out their freaking... They live in, like, you know, high rises. They're jumping out of the high rises, people, killing themselves because they're starving. They're not allowed out of their buildings. The government says, oh, we'll come in with little food packets. They're not even delivering those food packets to the people. They're rotting. They leave them on the road and just let them rot as the people are screaming out, right? And if they're not screaming out, they're jumping out, okay? And that's in 26 million people. And that's just one city in China. And that's the precedence that's being set for the whole fucking world as they're bringing in this, you know, green pass or something. Just to be able to go buy something. You know, credit score and all that shit. Like, who's fueling it? The public union sector, in part, because they think that if they fuel it, they'll be safe. But all they have to do is look at Uncle John and realize that they're not as safe as they think they are. Okay? Okay? Uncle John forfeited his superannuation life insurance policy so that he could have his family, the kids, and I, in late age of life and not be alone. And he still ended up being alone because of corruption within the healthcare system and our banking systems. Okay? And that was in 2015. And they were ruthless about it. And now you know they're even more ruthless about it. Okay? So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, people. I don't know how to fix this problem. I told my son I don't have to buy food this year because I'm okay now. Right? I'm just going to grow some, right? Like I got that base covered, but I will never have the housing covered, people. Never, never, never. I don't think so. But then you see it benefits people for me to falter and fall flat on my face because then they can come in and take Amari and prop up their household income with $3,000 of taxpayers' money to look after him and then basically just hand him over to the doctor so the doctor can come in and cut this and cut that and try this out and try that out. And you'll never see Amari. You'll never know how he is because they'll hide the truth, people. That's what will happen. Right? Or my son or Tisha will get Amari and they'll be facing the same damn thing that I'm facing. Because there's no end to it. Okay, this year is 1.3 million immigrants, and they're still processing the ones that they brought in 2016. Okay, I heard that with Premier Horgan. Oh, Oh, we're still processing the Syrians. Well, yeah, but you brought them in 2016. How the hell can you still be processing them? Well, we got the Afghanistans. We have to house them. Well, we don't have no room for the Ukrainians, so just clear out a room and stuff them in there. Do the right thing. Yeah, okay. Okay. Can you see a Punjabi cleaning out a monster, living in a monster home, cleaning out one of their rooms just to let a bunch of Ukrainian white people that don't speak English go live in their house? Oh, that would be a day. I don't see that happening, people. I just don't. I wouldn't want to do it, so I wouldn't expect a Punjabi to do it. But you see, the Punjabi would build a house for them because they can afford it, because the government is propping them up as they're decimating my family. So that guy next door is kind of right. It kind of goes back to the politicians, doesn't it? And if the politicians are fueling criminal activity, breeding corruption, then we can't be surprised that, you know, the people in the community are falling into it and being corrupted. Right? It's like, you know, an attic. An attic doesn't go in corrupt. They go in innocent, vulnerable, pure, and then they get introduced to drugs. They get abused, they get manipulated, they get coerced, they get threatened, and next thing you know it, the addict becomes corrupt. And it just becomes a part of themselves because that's what's around them. Well, it's the same thing with all this shit, with this housing crap. And then it goes back to that fear when you're in my position. I don't know if those guys over there are fearful. I would think, like I said, they're teetering. They're not a huge, big, multi-billion-dollar corporation that can absorb losses. They're just trying to eke out a living where there's money to be made, okay? And they're finding it all of a sudden, after 4 or 5 years of doing what they're doing, the game has changed. Right? And, you know, it may very well end up bankrupting them, especially if they get bad tenants coming in and then not wanting to pay rent or choose to trash their house. So the only good card that I feel that I have in my corner is the rent is covered. That was the point of the food prep last year. I wanted to make sure that no matter what was going on in the economy, I was able to pay my landlady her rent. I wasn't going to come to her and say, I can't because the cost of food is too high. I've got the grandkids and I can't afford to give it to you all. I can only give you this much. Whereas I can give it all to her. Now I'm still having to wheel and deal because my bills are high because of my own shenanigans with the food prep, but it's nothing I can't get under control over the next 6 months if I put my mind to it, right? And I already told my son I'm going to work on bringing down my bills so that when we do leave, right, you know, I will help with the extra cost of the higher rent, which still keeps me in debt, basically, but you know, I'm not trying to hold my landlord hostage to this house for the next 25 fucking years of my life. You crazy? I told you, it's a hard house to live in. But I do love the yard because I've spent so much time out there. Who wouldn't? And I am looking forward to finishing it. Because I'm a costume maker, I'm a seamstress, and I know in my mind already what it's going to look like before I'm even done the outfit, okay? And I'm at the end now where I just need to finish the outfit, and that's pretty much how I approach the yard. I just didn't realize it was going to take all these years because I've never worked in a yard as hard as I have in this yard, and, it took up a lot of my time, and, I suppose I could have done other things in my life, but it just didn't work out that way, and so there is no regrets. There cannot be no regrets, okay? And the way things are going, I doubt these houses will be torn down anytime soon. So more reason to finish the yard and make it look nicer in terms of what I plan to do with the vinyl siding and that kind of stuff. And, you know, and then it will just, because people, when everything's blooming, you don't know how many compliments I get. I get so many compliments all the time from all kinds of people. When everything's blooming, that is, right? So that's what I'm going to really focus on. It's just, and I'm doing that for me. I'm doing it for my kids. And I'm doing it for my landlady. And I'm doing it for the community. And then once this year's over, you know, I'll tackle next year however I tackle it. But I'm always under attack. I'm always made to feel bad. Right? Not always. I don't like that when people come to me. You always. You never do. You always. No, it's not always. But I'm oftentimes under attack. For no fault of my own. I'm not the one running the corruption. I'm not. Okay? So, that's better at Pitbull than Poodles, okay? Seriously. Right? Because at least this guy was talking. I told him, that's good. I talk too on YouTube. Sometimes too much. But that's what people need to do. They need to start talking more. Right? The ones that, you know, that are like this. That, you know, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, right? I mean, I'm not wishing ill on anybody, okay? Right? They got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. If they all start falling off the fucking grid, the problem's just going to get bigger. Okay, it's in my best interest to you know to prop them up a little bit and to help them like find a way so that you know things can somehow freaking balance out. But the problem with that, though, is, you know, I'm dealing with racism and that critical race theory, and all these immigrants are coming in that fucking hate white people and or black people or, you know, whatever, right? Because, you know, they're like this. They come in with nothing, but they're like this, you know, stuck up, right? Because of their religion or something stupid like that. Or because they're sitting on, you know, a windfall when it comes to cash and federal support systems and that type of shit, right? You know? They feel safe, right? I don't know. They get the benefits. Like, you know, after a year or two, they get access to start money to start businesses, buy homes, because they're immigrants, right? The government's going to build in all that crap as they phase out families like mine and harvest us. And then, like I said, after we're gone, that's when they're going to start targeting all these immigrants that they brought in, because it's human trafficking. So they'll target certain families to continue on with harvesting organs through the black market using taxpayers' money and resources and employees, government employees, to do it. Because the underground economy is what holds up the economy. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I could keep going around and around and around and around. Like I said, my brain is scattered. For as scattered as it was or is, I focused yesterday. I made myself focus. And I actually accomplished a fair amount. I worked a little bit in the basement because I'm still putting stuff away, right, in terms of the food and whatever, you know. And then I went outside and, you know, I planted some potatoes and shit, and, you know, I cleaned out at least half of the rabbit hutch to get that going, and, you know, and just I'm going to work hard, people. I'm going to work hard this year in the yard. Yeah, I'm looking so forward to having it done. As my landlady sells the house and I get kicked out. Right? From a corporation. or somebody. Because as soon as she sells this house, they're going to expect more money. Because that's the routine. That's part of the corruption. Because they know that they can rent it to an immigrant that's got connections to the city through some program that guarantees the rent in terms of $4,000. That's it in a nutshell. And I have nowhere to go. In a nutshell. And I couldn't even go into the interior, even if I wanted to, unless, of course, I wanted to turn my back on my grandson. And I won't do that, people. I just won't. I can't. I won't. I'd never turn my back on Amari. Never. Never. Just so I can live in a house. Right? Or anywhere for that matter. Something affordable, you know, just so I could live in something affordable, right? I'd never turn my back on Amari. Never. Oh boy, is he ever getting just to be a cocky little fella. Seriously, he's getting quite the little personality on him. Like he's just so chipper. He's so chipper, people. You know, he's a chipper little boy, right? Oh yeah. And you know he's so cute. Yeah, I love him so much. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end this video. So, better a pit bull than poodles. I'd rather have pit bulls in my yard than I have a whole pack of poodles running around yapping. Okay? Right? You know what I'm saying?